The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is arguably the best Zelda game in the series, and today I want to go through some of the development secrets from the team that brought us The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The following information is from interviews with Shigeru Miyamoto, Kazuaki, Morita and Takashi Tezuka discussing the development secrets from The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Well, if you enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing for more Zelda content. Plus also stick around to the end of the video to find out about some exclusive channel member benefits. Okay, without further delay, let's dive into these development secrets. So first of all, Nintendo started making A Link to the Past at the same time as Super Mario World for the Super Famicom console, and the plan was to release at the same time as a launch title. However, the release was delayed to coincide with the 1-year anniversary of the Super Famicom. Well, Miyamoto described the team working on A Link to the Past, saying they don't really spend a long time having a lot of employees work on the development of a single game. Nintendo have a few people developing a title, and that lasts about a year, and then they add more staff who spend about 8 months putting the finishing touches to a game. And they start doing a series of experiments with a small number of people to see what works and what doesn't, and then the project starts to take shape. They start testing with the hardware limits of the system, and then incorporate the enemies and the scenarios later on. Of course, this is talking about the Super Nintendo days back in the 90s. These days, games take much longer to develop. Well, next up, there were a number of alternative titles for A Link to the Past, including New Legend of Zelda and Ganon's Revenge, and internally they just called it Super Famicom Legend of Zelda. This made sense to the team because the game was supposed to be a launch title for the Super Famicom console. Well, the development team were restricted with the hardware for Zelda 1. They wanted to do things in the game, but they couldn't due to the hardware constraints of the Nintendo Entertainment System. For example, the level 7 dungeon entrance, Nintendo changed the colour of the ground when the water drained. However, they originally wanted the water to disappear. You could also burn down a small tree, but Nintendo wanted to burn down bigger ones, and the goal was for A Link to the Past to be a whole lot more realistic. Nintendo discussed the innovation in A Link to the Past when the first Legend of Zelda was released. Having a world based on swords and magic was a fresh idea. Saving your game, buying in-game items and dungeons, they were all new innovations back then. But in the 5 years since The Legend of Zelda was released, then many other games they were doing the same thing, and their levels of innovation were reduced, and this made Miyamoto pause for thought in what Nintendo might do to keep players entertained. Well, next up we got the spin attack. So the spin attack came from the desire to create diagonal movement and attacks for Link. Given the graphics and the capabilities that got much better on the Super Nintendo, the developers wanted to make the animations to match. So you can move diagonally, therefore attacking diagonally made sense, but the controls for this just didn't feel good. So the development team invented the spin attack. Well, the dash ability was a new addition to the game, and this was inspired by the dash ability in Mother on the Nintendo Entertainment System. There were concerns in making the controls too complicated. For example, there's a variety of actions that can be performed with the A button, like pick up and read. Miyamoto was concerned that players may not work out the ability to use switches, with the pushing or the pulling with the A button. Nintendo specifically put in controls for how to grab items by pressing A and a direction. Staff were opposed to this, but Miyamoto felt pressing A and a direction that felt more like actually pulling something in real life. Controls could have been simplified just to press a button, but Miyamoto felt players would get a great sense of satisfaction with these slightly more complex controls. So originally you can damage the Helmasaur King with the hammer, and the Helmasaur King is one of the dungeon bosses. You could only damage it with bombs. However, the team went back and made it possible to damage it with the hammer, because it was in the same dungeon as the hammer, and that just made a whole load of sense. Well, Miyamoto always wanted to revisit the open-ended Zelda adventure, although the hardware on the Super Nintendo was too restrictive. He wanted a world that players could get lost in, even taking them a year to finish. Miyamoto explains if you ignore structure, then plot lines can get complex, and NPC messages just don't make sense. Programming in enough logic to handle this would have taken 150% more memory than the team had, although the team would go back to this concept later in Breath of the Wild. Well, Nintendo had loads of ideas that never made it into the final game, including creating a grass fire with a lantern and cutting a circle in the middle of the grass so you could safely stand in the fire. Also, digging a hole in the swamp and then bombing the hole, and that would cause water to rush into the hole. The latter concept was in development, and Miyamoto said that if they had 6 more months, then they would have added it, but at the end of the day, it was left on the cutting room floor. Well, the enemies in A Link to the Past, they are smart for the day it was made. If you make a noise, then some soldiers can hear you over a wall, even if they can't see you. They can also hear you and they come running. And if you stay still, they won't come after you, but if they hear you fighting with another soldier, then they will come and help. There's also some dumb enemies too, soldiers that seek out players without paying attention to obstacles, and they are described by the development team as enemies with low IQs. And the low IQ enemies, well, they are dangerous because they tend to be stronger as well. So we've got a few similarities with Super Mario. The fire-spinning bars that appear in some dungeons were designed for Zelda on the Nintendo Entertainment System. They're also similar to the fire-spinning bars in Super Mario Bros. Also, the way you pick up grass in A Link to the Past is very similar to picking up a turnip in Super Mario Bros. 2. A Link to the Past has a light and a dark world. However, during development there were 3 worlds. The third world was removed because the development team felt players would have gotten confused, and also the light and dark world were born out of a single world, and then, eventually in development, was split into 2. Figuring out the difficulty was a challenge for the development team. During development, the difficulty of enemies changed every day as the team watched testers play through the game. The difficulty of the puzzles was another thing. Miyamoto observed that there's a difference in people who can find hints themselves and people that can't. Sometimes you think a puzzle is easy and solvable in 1 minute, and then it takes a tester hours. Hints would be placed, but then players would miss them, so the team went back and placed the hint 3 times. Now, at first there were very few hints and playtesters didn't react well. However, when they solved the puzzle they had a good reaction, and they looked back at the difficulty and remembered the struggle as fun. When Nintendo increased the number of hints, the testers found it boring, so Nintendo decreased the amount of hints once again. Miyamoto emphasised the need for a constant stream of side quests. He didn't want to make quests that said, go and give the medicine to the girl, but rather for the players to think about it themselves and what they should bring to her. Nintendo planned more actions like eat and dance, but they just couldn't fit these additional actions into the game in the time that was allocated. Well, huge thank you to Famicom Tushin magazine, and also the official guide put to the Japanese version of A Link to the Past that was published in 1991 by Shogo Kukan. Well, let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you've got any development secrets that you know about A Link to the Past, share them in the comments with the community. Well, that is it today for this video looking at the development secrets from A Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past. And as always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget you can hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times. You can also like the video and share the video too, that would really help me out here on the channel. Well, thanks again, and I will see you very soon. Well, this video is brought to you by Triforce Times Backstage. This is available through Patreon or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Triforce Times. Free content is core to Triforce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Triforce Times Backstage today. So help me make Triforce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it is time to go back to the video.